Okay, hello and welcome to the IPAF webinar today, focusing on the 2025 Global Safety Report. Today's webinar will be focusing on the understanding of the safety trends and some of the risk mitigation that we're going to be highlighting. We have a record 312 people registered today from 48 countries for this webinar. That's absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for everybody registering. But that leads me to say, so thank you and good morning, good afternoon or evening from wherever you are joining us today, because it's truly an international webinar. There's two of us today. I'm going to ask my co-presenter to introduce herself first. Over to you, Alana.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. I'm Alana Patterson. I am Head of Health and Safety for Taylor Woodrow, who are part of the UK division of Vinci Construction and the outgoing chair of the IPAF International Safety Committee, which I've been doing for the last 2 years.
Thank you, Alana. And myself, I'm Brian Parker. I am IPAF's Head of Safety and Technical, and really appreciate Alana giving up her free time today to help and support us on this webinar. So just a bit of housekeeping. This webinar is, as you probably heard, being recorded and will be available on the IPAF YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So, this is where you'll find past and webinars. We will, subject to time, have a Q&A session where you can put your questions to both Alana and myself. So you will see the little question thing that you can ask. So please be gentle, be nice, but we do welcome questions if we can help and support you. So you should be seeing my screen now. I should be sharing. Hopefully that's okay, Alana.
Yeah, that's come up for me.
Good stuff. Okay, so that's always a positive. So let's crack on. So just a reminder who IPAF is. We are a not-for-profit trade association representing the interests of manufacturers, distributors, users, rental companies, contractors, and training companies globally. We've got over 1,900 members, which is fantastic, and we are growing really, really fast. I think everybody here will understand that we're best known for our global IPAF PAL training scheme. However, it's broader than that, it's wider than that. And ultimately, our mission is simple: promote and enable a safe and effective use of powered access equipment worldwide. So powered access being obviously mobile elevated working platforms, hoists, and mast climbing work platforms. But how do we do this? Well, we do it in a number of ways, but by keeping it to the topic today of today's webinar, we monitor our accident data from the industry, also from our members, and that helps us produce the global safety report. We can look at local initiatives and also look at guidance and various support training outside globally.
So this is the second digital version of the Global Safety Report, albeit it is not the second version. We've been doing this for a few years now. But the new format enables us to navigate and filter using an interactive screen. So those of you on the webinar should be able to access the report, if not during the webinar, immediately afterwards. And you'll be able to have a look through. The latest data focuses on fatal and major incidents, with the ability for you to segment short term data with medium and long term data, so you can see where the differences are. The data can illustrate emerging patterns, trends, enables comparison, particularly with last year's data against the medium to long term, thus highlighting safety and training needs within the industry, and helps inform some of the campaigns, as Brian says, that we focus on, particularly with the International Safety Committee. The accident data in this report is always a year in arrears, so the 2025 data will not appear until next year's report, when we go through and anonymise, review and approve the data, which the International Safety Committee support Brian and the team in doing, to ensure that we have accurate information.
Thanks, Alana. So yeah, really important point there. So the data has now been released for 2024. So when you head to your members portal, you should see this in there now, or certainly over the next day. Okay, so that's really good to see that, and let's try and work with this data. So the 2024 Global Safety Report was actually shortlisted for 2 prestigious awards. as you can see the numbers on there, and the sort of awards there. Although we didn't win, it was a great night, but it was a fantastic achievement to be shortlisted for these awards. We had a target last year to actually try and get 4,500 views of the Global Safety Report. Well, we surpassed that with over 9,300 views, but we also reached 111 countries. So it just shows the far-reaching wideness of this Global Safety Report and how it's used around the world.
It absolutely does, and it's fantastic. Although I'm still a little aggrieved that you didn't invite me to the awards, Brian.
Sorry,
So now we're going to take a look at some of the accident statistics for 2024 and for 2025. So before we talk about the information that is on this slide, Brian, when people look at the Global Safety Report, they will see that the information published in the report, it differs slightly to the information that you're showing on the screen for 2024. And I think it would be worth explaining to the audience why this is, Brian.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a point in time that we always have to be very mindful of. We used to close off the reports kind of around March time in preparation for the report to be published June/July. There's a significant amount of work that then takes place in relation to looking at reports, reviewing each and every one of them, looking at, if we've got any duplicate reports, because we need to be clear what our data is telling us. Equally, though, we also have to have a time when we close off that report. And this year we closed off that report in February. We were still getting fatal and major incidents reported into the portal for 2024 in June. Now, by that time, we've already analysed the data. We've also created the narrative of the report. So if we'd have changed the numbers, Alana, we'd have basically said, well, the issues are going down, but actually it may look like it's going up. So hopefully that explains to the listeners here today.
Yeah, it also demonstrates the importance, though, of when we're inputting data into the IPAF accident portal and anyone's accident portal, in all fairness, that the information should go in a timely manner, and people need to be mindful if they want to contribute to the work that we do as IPAF and the people like myself who contribute to the committees, to enable us to have real effective data to look at the trends and where our campaigns and training courses need to be focused, and we need the data before the end of February of the following year at the very, very latest.
Okay, so we've got some of the data on the screen there. So as you can see for 2024, and you can see there in terms of the numbers. For 2025, this is kind of provisional data currently, but this shows the types of incidents that have occurred. This is all data, by the way. This is fatal, major, minor, first aid, and near misses. I think the point I will make at the moment is there's a lot of you here on this webinar today that have the ability to change that number on the left-hand side, and you can see that currently we're down 37%. Now that's 37% at the same time now as what we were last year. So it's just that's gives us a few challenges. We tend to find we do catch up in time, but that does concern me at this matter. So I think hopefully we can use today to be a bit of a springboard to try and improve that. The good number is the number on the right, and I'll have that all day, because if we are 54% down on fatals, that does it's still not good. It's still not good, and it shows we've got work to do, but it shows that we are in a downward trend there. But we'll see how we go. Okay, so as a reminder, really, the digital report has been a shift away from the static report, and we believe this is more interactive and gives that filterable ability. Now, in terms of the reports, I think from 20 to 23, we saw a steady increase in the incidents. I've already mentioned what's happened in 24, so you've got them numbers. But I think certainly we are getting greater global participation. Nearly every conference, event, course now, we talk about the improvement, the importance of accident reporting, how that improves our data and makes it more accurate. But still, as we'll see very shortly, there are some high-risk activities and sadly some reoccurring themes that we need to look at. So if you reviewed the previous report, that's still going to stay there. but this is your chance now to try and help and shape future reports.
And I think it's fair to say, Brian, it's actually really simple to report an incident on the IPAF accident reporting portal. You know, I've done it myself in various different guises. As a member, you can request a login with your specific data in one area on the portal. So you can see your powered access incident trends. I'm right in saying that some of the members that are powered access companies who are relatively small use this as their own accident reporting portal. But you don't need to be a member of IPAF to report an incident through the portal. You can go online and do it as a guest. But you can also do it through the ePal app, which is easily downloadable from the App Store of whichever type of phone that people use today. And if you have a powered access card, that button is actually there on your ePal app for you to use straight away anyway to be able to report an incident. And Brian, I know that you and the team would rather get the same incident reported 2-3 times and be able to filter it out as not get the report at all. But I think the one thing that's really worthy of noting, in the last year, we've really had a push on the sectors of mast climbers and construction hoists, because they are powered access equipment as well as MEWPs. But unfortunately, we're not getting a huge amount of data from those sectors at the moment. And I would really, really like to see in next year's report more information so that we can give them a bit more focus.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. And if we can get more mast, construction hoists and mast climbers data on there, that'd be really useful. Just remember, it would be remiss of me not to mention this, that every report is anonymized. So any data that you may put in, you may put a name, a place, a brand, a location, that is removed, and that data remains confidential. So we don't share that data with anybody. But I will say that accident data does get used by industry. And that does come out with some innovations that are in this industry. So they're looking at the top reasons why people don't go home to their families. So that leads me quite nicely into the fatal incident rate for IPAF for the globe, and you can see there that all the main classifications are below 0.01 in the last 3 years, and we added the 2024 data just a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe last week, when we were confident that this data was as best as we can get. It is the most accurate reporting portal globally for powered access. And I think, I can caveat the fact that, we don't know of everything. We know we don't. That's why we need you to help us so we can help you. And if you register for the accident reporting portal, you will get, as I said, as Lana said, you will get your own login and you will be able to look at data, but you will also be able to look at your own organization and benchmark it against the rest of the industry anonymously. So you can see how many falls you've had, how many entrapments you've had, how many, if you're a rental company, how many loading incidents have happened, what type of incidents occur. So it's quite really easy. So yeah, the only thing I'll probably mention is that we use the fleet source from Ducker and Carlisle, which provide the market report, and you can see some of the numbers there down at the bottom. So I think here we're just going to kind of, we're looking at this data and we haven't exposed anything to you yet. I think what we're going to just have a look at some of our takeaways, what the things are. Alana, we've got 5 points there. We've got additional points on the next slide. Those who operate around this, globe must internationally recognise that the risks don't vary by location. The principles of safe use are typically global, and yet we're still seeing some of the same incidents. So if we look at number one there, have you any thoughts there as you've been in construction, you've been to rental, you're now back in construction. What's your thoughts there?
I think for me, this is the one thing that it absolutely sits as number one on the top of the list as a 10-point action plan. And we've discussed this many times before, Brian. thorough risk assessment and preparation of the safe work system of work is key. And some of the other factors in this action plan actually feed into making sure that that is thorough and it's correct for the work that's being undertaken. In my time in the powered access industry, I saw so many incidents with powered access that the pre-planning wasn't there. The wrong type of MEWP was selected for the job. The weight was wrong for the ground conditions. The MEWP wasn't going to easily maneuver through steelwork, all of those sorts of things. So the risk assessment and that preparation of that safe system of work to make sure that you have set the people that are going to be operating MEWPs, hoists, mast climbers up for success are absolutely is the key document, whether it is a legal requirement in your country or not.
Yeah, and I think you pitched on some things there in terms of selection of the right equipment for the task. When we have incident reports put into the portal, sometimes the level of detail can, once you extract that and analyze it, you can identify sometimes that the machine was never the right equipment for the job. The task was clearly surveyed and they've identified equipment that wasn't right. Now, IPAF, we do have a MEWP a selection for the correct MEWP course, and I think that would be really useful for some people. I've seen seasoned site assessors get jobs wrong, when they've, and I think I probably hold my hands up. I've spec'd machines that have probably there's been a better machine. So you've got to be really careful about the type of equipment you've got there. And also looking at type of things, the type of task that we're doing is they got materials and such. Managers and supervisors, I think, we can probably talk all day. We're very, very good on operator. We're absolutely, doing really, really well. Not as well as last year, but we're doing really, really well in terms of training numbers for operators. But what about this supervision? You talk about planning, Alana. What's the thoughts there?
Well, this is something that I'm passionate about, as are a couple of other people in our industry, and we've been banging the drum for a long time. I think for me, this is another key point that, if the audience take nothing else away, they take this away and have a think about it, is the fact that we have managers and supervisors putting people to work on powered access equipment across the globe, day in, day out. And you and I both know the uptake on MEWPs for managers is quite minimal, and its equivalents across the globe. I know it's not called MEWPs for managers everywhere. And we've now got the new Construction Hoists and Mast Climbers for managers course, which, it's relatively new to market. But the number of people who have been through those courses that are putting people to work on this equipment day in, day out is very small. And so I would question sometimes the competence level of those people, not in the supervisory and management tasks, but the knowledge around powered access equipment and what they need to do as managers and supervisors to keep their people safe.
100% agree with you. I've been on a couple of sites of late, and I was quite shocked to find that pre-use inspections weren't being carried out. There was supervisors present who looked quite sheepish when we questioned some of the examples that we were seeing. For one, I won't name names, but there was a machine there with an e-stop missing. They were still using the machine. So the emergency stop was actually missing. So they wouldn't have been able to hit the machine should an emergency have occurred. The second machine that we came up for, which they said that we could use, we had to, chat nicely to the gentleman to come down from it. But it was its ground controls and its emergency lowering were wall side. So there was no way at all that individual could have been rescued should have been required. Now this is basic information, and when questioned to the manager, they actually said, "Oh yeah, we were going to do the mutual managers course, but we just didn't get round to it." And we had a bit of a discussion that when these things go wrong, what's one of the first things that's going to be asked for is what was the individual's training, and we normally focus on the management of the operator. But the regulator will look at the management of the whole process. So we'll just move on to the next slide. So top of the list there is recovery and rescue plans. I've seen various examples of late, and I've just given you an example of one rescue plan that certainly wouldn't have been able to be achieved, certainly without some sort of intervention at some other point. But any thoughts on this, Alana?
I think this is another key point that links back to the risk assessment, sorry, and the safe system of work, Brian. The recovery and the rescue plan should be included in that. It should be thought about. But that information needs to be shared with the right people. We need to make sure that we've got people on the ground that can enact the recovery and rescue of a machine should there be an issue, and that the machine is in the right position. Like you said, we often see emergency controls against a wall, inaccessible, or side by side with another machine, as an example that I've seen recently, where both sets of controls were facing each other. So someone would have had to get in between the two machines to enact a rescue. But the most pertinent point in that is actually, are the controls working? So is the operator checking them during their pre-use inspection? Because it is one of the items in the pre-use inspection that's often missed. But lastly, are we practicing those recovery and rescues to make sure that the plan is actually correct and it does work, and the people that are on the ground know how to enact that should it all go wrong? You know, both of us have had the misfortune to investigate fatalities when we were both working in the rental industry, and you see things or you see information when a rescue is enacted and it's been done the wrong way, and it's actually made the situation worse, which is very sad and not fair on the individuals who've tried to enact the rescue.
Correct, yeah. And I think, the one thing I always sort of promote, and hopefully you can see my phone there, the EPAL app, we can now use the EPAL app to do pre-use checks. You can use them for guided or non-guided. So if you're an experienced operator, you know that machine inside out, you can use a non-guided check, which is a very, very quick, simple way. I can prove I've done my check. If, however, you've got a product here that maybe is a little bit unfamiliar to you, once you've looked at the operator's manual, you can use a non-guided check, and it will talk you through all the things that you should be checking on that machine. That can be shared. That pre-use check can be shared, and it is your proof of being able to use the machine properly, and the machine is working properly. Just on point 6, by the way, so this audience knows, we've been working quite hard. Certainly, we've had a working group and my colleagues on the recovery and rescue guidance. Mm-hmm. So we have prepared some. It's basically a principles document. And that is all being well going to be launched in September by IPAF. It will be a global document to give you the principles of how to recover and also rescue a MEWP. So please watch this space. This is something else where we're just trying to make sure people, can get down if required. So I think pointing on 7 and 8, we talked about selection of equipment earlier, and that's quite a broad subject, as we know, whether that's looking for overhead hazards, whether it's looking for ground obstacles, whether it's looking for subterranean type, hazards and such. But we need to control, we need to monitor. And I think most importantly, we've got to think wherever we are, we need to plan for eventualities and shortly when we show a little short video, hopefully people understand where sadly planning wasn't actually present in this. I think they maybe had a plan. I just don't think they actually planned for what was going to happen. So I've got, Alana, have you got any other thoughts on there on 8, 9 or 10?
I think for me, we've spoken about competence of supervision, but we do need to supervise and monitor works. Unfortunately, there are operators that will forget a certain part of the safe system of operation when using powered access equipment. Not clipping on is an example. We know there are products in the market today that we can talk about later that help support supervision in knowing whether or not the personnel are clipped on, but also ensuring that those controls are not against the wall, etc., etc. And really promoting that culture of reporting and learning, letting us know when it doesn't quite work, or if someone's come across a new product or a new way of doing things that supports powered access safety. Picking up the phone and talking to someone like you or someone on the International Safety Committee to say, we find a new way of doing things and what we found is really positive, can we come and share it with you? That all needs to be fed back into IPAF so that we can share this across the globe, because as you said earlier, the incidents that we see, doesn't matter if it's in the UK, if it's in China, the US, the Middle East, the incidents are generally the same the world over, to varying degrees. And whilst we have various types of legislation, the guidance generally is the same.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay, so just going to move on. My colleague in the office is now going to play this video. This is, as I alluded to earlier, when planning doesn't go according to plan. So here we've got a car, it's off a dash cam, as you can probably see. They've come to an intersection and they're coming up to the stop on the red light. Now, just before that, the sharp-eyed ones of you may have seen an Arctic rig on the left-hand side, and that's just about to start joining this traffic that's come round. So you've got a boom working on a traffic light. The guy's just walked out into the middle of the road, talking to him, and now you'll see the truck come round. And unfortunately, it makes contact with the underside of that platform, which looks like an insulated boom lift. I think the only saving grace is the gentleman wore a harness that day, and that certainly has probably saved that guy's life. If he hadn't have worn that harness, it could have been certainly different, and we could have been, having another statistic. This only happened in the last sort of few weeks. I have been in contact with some of my colleagues in the United States, and in terms of trying to sort of look at what we can do to help and support them. So hopefully some learnings can come out of here. So I think I'll just share. Hopefully I'm sharing back again my screen. That all gone okay, Lana?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
cool.
back on now. We're still on the 10-point action plan though.
Yeah,
Right?
I know. Yeah. So there was the holding screen for the video. So so today we're going to cover the most common cause of accidents involving powered access, and these top 6 are how they now appear in the Global Safety Report. Those of you who reviewed the 2024 report will have seen this is different, so we'll crack on. So as you can see there, electrocution, electric shocks. There's been a 31% decrease in electric shocks reported. The arboricultural industry, so the tree fellers, the pruners, that sort of thing, are still the most affected sector with 8 fatalities and 1 major. This was followed by the electrical sector, which is probably no surprise, and then the construction sector.
So the next one on the list is overturns, and in a couple of minutes we will actually talk about the global safety campaign for this year, which is Stop Overturns. However, pleased to announce that we have actually seen a 12.5% decrease in the overturn incidents reported, with 21 reports received in 2024 in comparison to the 24 in 2023. The most common type was 1B vehicles, with just over 40%, and that was followed closely by 3A type MEWPs with 33% and 3B with 10%.
Thanks, Alana. So the next one I pressed too quick earlier, but you can see that there's no surprises where that line's headed. So from 23 to 24, you can see there that's quite a significant increase, and we'll cover this a little bit later on in another topic there, but I think that's really something everybody to be mindful of.
And the fourth one on the list is falls from the platform, and one that we've just seen on the screen. We've seen a 44% decrease in falls from the platform, with 23 reports in 2024 and 26 people. In 23, we saw 41 reports with 33 fatalities. So that actually resulted in a 39% reduction in fall-related fatalities, with 20 deaths reported in 2024. And we will talk about it a little bit later, but I think that's testament to the Falls from the Platform campaign that we did a few years ago, Brian.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of hit by falling objects, it's a bit, it's positive that we've had a 50% decrease in the incidents reported, which is great. But there was 9 reports received in 2024. However, we've seen a 75% increase in fatalities with 7 deaths reported. So really, so really important to sort of, we need to look at this and how people are being killed from falling objects.
And then the last of the top 6 is MEWPs that are inoperable around mechanical and technical failure. We've seen a 33% decrease in reports of fatal and major injuries relating to this topic on all types of powered access equipment. So we had 8 reports, 13 people were involved in these incidents, and it was down nearly 32% from 2023.
Okay, and it's worth reminding everybody that these trends are all about fatal and major incidents. We don't cover first aid, minor, near miss, etc. So they're in a different report. I mentioned earlier that you get access to the data. That's where you can find that data in the other reports. So again, it's just that we've got to focus on the headline stuff. Okay, so let's move on to one that was certainly on the increase. The entrapment. Now, of these fatalities which have occurred, the one thing that I would probably recommend to you all, if you've not had options and seen it on the IPAF website, is to review the good practice guidance for reducing trapping, crushing injuries to people in the MEWPs. And this guide is what we call legislation neutral. It therefore can be used in any country in the world. If you're in the United Kingdom and you log on, you will get UK legislation in there. So, but if you go from another country, it's going to be legislation neutral. So you're going to have to apply your legislation to this guidance. Now, albeit we put a bit of a doom and gloom aspect on it earlier, that it was on the increase in 2024, which it was, perhaps there's some good news, albeit I will caveat that we are still down on reports, is that early provisional data for 2025, we've had 3 reports, so we're down nearly 85%, and 3 countries have reported. There have been 3 fatalities year to date, and ultimately that is down 80% on where we were in the previous year, which is positive, I think, Alana. So let's see if we can hope and continue that going. Your work. Our work is never complete. I think that's fair to say, but we're now seeing some contractors specifying secondary guarding for scissors for vertical type MEWPs. And it's my understanding that certainly in the UK, some sites, some principal contractors and tier ones will mandate these as a requirement for 3A type vertical machines on their projects. What's your thoughts on this, Alana? How would you feel? You work for a massive contractor. What's your thoughts?
I mean, it's absolutely not a surprise to me. I've seen this coming for quite some time. Yourself in the UK and even in other countries throughout the globe, secondary guarding devices, or anti-entrapment, as some people may know them, have been in use and mandated on boom type MEWPs for a number of years. However, we do see significant fatalities on scissor lifts with entrapment. So it's not a surprise. And I think in many cases, it's the right thing to do. However, the one thing that I would caveat that with is that everyone needs to be mindful of the risk assessment process and ensuring that it's the right machine with the right attachments for the task. Is that secondary guarding device going to do what you expect it to do? Because there are different options on the market, as there always has been, with boom type MEWPs as well. So we need to ensure that we identify the right equipment for the task, and part of that is ensuring that the rescue plans are in place as well. We laboured on this earlier, Brian, but we need to have the right resources available, the right plan in place, and that plan needs to be practiced, so that we don't just rely on the secondary guarding device, because it is a secondary safety system. It will not necessarily stop someone from becoming entrapped. Some of the systems let you know that it's happened, but it doesn't stop it.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think it's widely accepted that there is no one single device that's known to prevent all types of entrapment, and I think it's very dangerous to specify. Personally, secondary guarding on a product, you need to know what it's going to do, how it's going to work, how it can be reset, and I think there's also that human element that we need to be mindfully aware of. Is that once we've got all these sensors on the machine, I don't have to look anymore. I'll let it do my job. I'll let it do the job for me. Yeah, and I've had that incident before happen to me, you know, not in a mute, thankfully, in my car, relying on the sensors and bump the wall. So let's just, you know, the best is your senses, your ears, look around, observe, check. I think from a, you know, certainly some of the solutions or some of the sort of things that are happening in the UK is simulators now, where they are checking competence of the operator and making sure they are looking around before they actually let them get on the project. And we had a discussion of this internally the other day. And, you know, even though they've got the training here, though they understand and familiarize with the machine, you know, they press the lever, press the button, and they're going up. And this will tell the would-be assessor, look, you're not looking up where you're going. You still need to be very much aware of what's around you. So I think that's hopefully a good point to highlight.
Yeah, just before we move on from that as well, we need to remember that PAL Plus is available. So if we've got operators that are going to be utilising a MEWP in and around, say, steelwork, which is one of the common areas where we find entrapment, where we've got people working in and around steelwork and other parts of buildings, then, you know, the PAL Plus course is there to teach them how to manoeuvre around obstructions. It is an advanced operators course, and it's something that employers, end users, and managers and supervisors should consider.
Correct. Thank you. Just a quick reminder, don't forget you can still ask us questions. We're hoping to sort of finish the presentation in about 10 minutes. So we've got roughly sort of 10 minutes for questions and any answers, and put Alana on the spot. So next we'll have a look at IPAF's safety campaign for 2025, stop overturns. And I think it's fair to say that, you know, when we have overturns, often result in serious injuries or fatalities. And it's it's commonly inconsistent in the top 4 of lost time incidents annually, according to our data. And I think when we look at some of this, you know, resources we've got, Alana, what's your thoughts on some of this information here?
I mean, you know, we've already spoken about the requirement for familiarization on a machine. We shouldn't be putting operators to work unless they've been familiarized with a machine or they've got the ability to self-familiarize. We have various guidance and tools available on the IPAF website to support the people putting these people to work and the operators in making the decisions about the right environment, the right type of MEWP, what precautions need to be taken to ensure that a MEWP doesn't overturn. You know, the assessment of the ground conditions is so important. We wouldn't put a piling rig or, you know, a 500-ton crane on some ground without doing some assessment. So why would we do that with a piece of powered access equipment?
Correct. Yeah, and I think one thing to mention is that I think it was last year now, or maybe earlier this year, we started a little mini campaign on Share Your Story.
Yeah.
This was basically thought of by our president, and we are just about to release our second Share Your Story, which will be based around overturns. And most of the times we look at these things, you think, look how much planning wasn't done prior to this incident occurring. So I think just hopefully you'll see this very shortly. And it'll be a good 3 or 4 minute video that we can use on site. We can talk about it. We can consider the things. So I'll just go through the campaigns. We launched Force on the Platform in 2022, and the number in the box is going to tell you how many people sadly have been killed in that period of time. High Voltage was launched 2023. The entrapment campaign, named Crushing and Kill, launched in 2024. And earlier this year, Alana and myself had the privilege of standing at the IPAF summit to launch the campaign for Stop Overturns. Now, you can see there the numbers of views and the countries. We won't dwell on too much on these. These are fatal statistics only. Some harrowing numbers there when you look at that in terms of people being injured and killed. So, Alana, over to you. We've got the Don't Fall For It. We'll just quickly whiz through these, and then hopefully we can do a bit of discussion or some questions. I can see there's a few questions coming in. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so the Don't Fall For It campaign was the first one that we launched, and it wasn't, I don't think, a surprise to any of us on the International Safety Committee when we initially saw an increase in the number of falls reported. because we'd raised awareness across the globe on this topic and asked for people to tell us about it. But the reports did drop in 23 to 24, and it was a sign that maybe the focus had dropped. However, we have seen an increase. No, we haven't seen an increase in this, but so the numbers have dropped. But is that a sign that we've taken our foot off the gas and the focus has dropped, or that the campaign has worked? But I would question one way or the other. We've also spoken about today the introduction of new anchor points on MEWPs that are available from some of the rental companies and the OEMs. The words intelligent anchor points or positive anchor points have been bandied around, which is a tool to ensure that supervisors and managers know that the people in the MEWPs are actually clipped on. It also, some of the systems out there can stop the MEWP operating if the operator is not clipped on.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point you point out there, is that it's a bit like airbags on cars, or seatbelts on cars. They took time to get through, and I think what we're seeing now is there are certainly some third-party innovations that have come out in terms of positive attachment, intelligent attachment. The word intelligent is sometimes a little bit misleading, because there are various levels of intelligence. What do I want that device to do? Do I want it to notify me as an operator that I forgot to, or is it going to notify my manager who's going to tear a strip off? Do I want it to sound an alarm, flash a light? So I think, let's hats off to our manufacturers who do a fantastic job designing these products and safely designing great equipment. But we're seeing some things now with basic types of basic types of anchorage points, maybe where it just has a light and maybe like a buzzer, up to the point where it can actually geolocate where I actually am and tell me and tell others if I've actually worn my harness and clipped it on. So I look at this kind of stuff and that's coming out, and I think it's interesting how we're going. It won't be long before the manufacturers take it all on board, and it's like a requirement of the MEWP that comes with it. Okay, so in terms of high voltage, we launched this campaign in Las Vegas at ConExpo. The incidents dropped slightly after launch of the campaign, and we did see a slight drop in the number of incidents and a reduction of a fatal instance. But we still see this is consistently in the top 4 for this. And unfortunately, I think if we look back earlier on, it's a number 1 for this year. So we need to do more work around highlighting, checking. We've also got to be mindful that in 2027, when the machinery regulation comes out, there is a requirement, certainly written as it is at the moment, to prevent equipment from making contact with power lines. Remember, a power line is not always overhead. You may be already above that power line, lower down onto it, or you may be lateral to it and rotate into that power line. So just be aware of that, okay?
Okay, so Crushing Can Kill, that was launched last year. You and I launched this one as well in Berlin, I think, Copenhagen.
Yeah.
So again, the number of incidents increased after the campaign launched, and I think we can question whether or not that was as a result of the campaign being launched. It's been on an upward trend since 2022. After we did actually see a significant fall 2020 to 2022, but we've discussed this at the ISC, and it was quite interesting. We suspect that COVID had something to do with that fall in figures. The campaign coincided with a number of incidents. While fatal incidents have been on the upswing since 2022, there has been a decline in incidents overall of this nature.
Yeah, and what I would say as well is that, generally speaking, from an entrapment situation, much like an electrocution, it's highly difficult to survive it. Overturns, we tend to find people, they can survive the overturn, equally the fall from the platform, but we tend to find that this has got a high fatality rate, so it's something to be very much aware of. Entrapments can kill. Okay, and of course that leads us onto the this year's campaign. So just a real quick oversight of this, really. The numbers have decreased in 2024, but we still felt the necessity to launch that campaign to try and reduce these numbers even further. The data identified that 1B were the most common type of MEWPs, and again primarily used for arborists, electrical companies. So they are carrying out work nearing roads and verges. We've had that soft ground that's caused some of these overturns to occur. So long may it still going down, but there's still work to be doing this. And I think there was only a post put on a social network the other day of a whole machine disappearing down
Yes, I saw that.
down through I think it was a pavement. Yeah, the whole thing went down. Thankfully, the operator survived. But yeah, so again, something to be very much aware of. So, of course, we encourage you to use the Global Safety Report webpage to help us identify the incidents, make us aware of the incidents for all powered access. It's not just a question of learning from them, but we need to then act upon them. Planning, risk assessment, safe systems of work are all critical, but also communication is key. Checking and monitoring. I think it's very important that we need to make the safety personal. Everybody agrees with that, but we need to also sometimes make it visible and be very much effective. I still believe, and I'm sure you will, Anna, that most serious and fatal incidents are predictable, but also very much preventable. So we can remove that thing. We look at that truck that we saw earlier. It was obvious that something was going to make contact with that, but just why did somebody not step back and think, why can we not do that? Or why should we not do that? So
Yeah.
I do believe the Global Safety Report is critical for duty holders and sectors, so they can have a look at this and see the type of incidents that's occurring. So okay, so that brings us on. That brings us on to the Q&A session. I noticed that we have got a number of questions in there, and generally speaking, once we start asking one, we might get a few more. So don't be shy if you have got anything burning questions. So I'll take the first one. It says, I'm trying to find the 10-point action plan on your website. Can you share a link to this, please? It's not on our website. It's something that Alana and I discussed about this. It is anonymous, this attendee. I think some of that we can share with this whole webinar will be available for you to look at as well. And then we can have a look at. Of course, if you have any other thoughts on on what should be in that 10-point, we can move and we can change and we can review it accordingly. So I've got another question there. Are incidents or entrapment occurring with older equipment that do not have secondary guarding or electronic crush prevention sensors? Is there any data for the age of equipment to correlate with accidents? So that's an anonymous question.
It's a good question, though.
It's a great question. Thank you for that. I think we do sometimes get the fleet number and involved in that, but it doesn't necessarily. Sorry, apologies. We'll get the model number and the manufacturer. That doesn't necessarily give us the age of the product. I think pretty much we must. I think age, as I keep telling my wife, has got nothing to do with it. I think we need to look at what we're trying to address. There are products that are able to be retrospectively attached to booms and scissor lifts to try and mitigate against entrapment. However, as I say, it's I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Alana. Age and the equipment, it's a difficult one.
It is a difficult one, and it's because of the anonymized data and the fact that the accident portal has been set up in such a way to ask the most common questions that we think people will provide the information for. And it's maybe something that we need to look at as the International Safety Committee to see if we need to maybe add optional fields around age of machine, whether there was secondary guarding attachments, etc. But secondary guarding attachments don't always prevent crushing. If I think about the entrapment incidents that I've been involved in or investigated over my career, there have been entrapment incidents where secondary guarding devices have been fitted. It's just that the machine's either been used in the wrong application, or the operator hasn't used the machine quite in the way that they should have done. So they're not 100% foolproof. And I go back to what I said earlier, the risk assessment part of this is absolutely key. Have you got the right device? And it's not a prevention device, it's a mitigation device. So we need to factor in all of that to ensure right machine for the task, right operator for the task. Is the secondary guarding device going to do what you're expecting it to do? Is it in the place where you need it to be to prevent trapping and crushing?
Yeah, and I think as well, I would add that you've got somebody on the ground capable of rescuing
Yeah.
that operator who's familiar that sometimes these things may need to be reset. And I think it would be worth saying as well is that some of the entrapment situations that we have been reported are not always at height. Some of them are at ground level, and
Yeah.
when the machine is in the stowed position, going under doorways, going through doorways, or when traveling potentially at quite a high speed, reversing back, and striking something behind. We've also seen entrapment situations, unfortunately, where the machine has been used in pedestrian control mode. So they've taken the control box off and have walked it through or walked it back. So yeah, we're aware of that. So I think it's hopefully that answers the question. You didn't put your name on there, so I don't know who you are. So I've got a question from Rob Cavallari. Thank you, Rob. In the presentation, you've discussed a 10-point action plan for reducing accidents and incidents. That includes recovery and rescue. Are you aware of different MEWP manufacturers are working on standardization where possible, the methods for lowering the MEWP in emergency, using the emergency auxiliary lowering systems on the MEWP? So I sit on the CEN-TC 98 working group. There is no, I can categorically say to you, Rob, there is no intention at the moment for standardizing the methods for lowering the MEWP in an emergency. We've got innovative companies. Those companies need to innovate, but I think what we need to try and get closer to is a common way of having to do this. I've been on thousands of machines in my nearly 30 years, and opening this valve, turning this key, opening this cover, not where you thought it was going to be. I think these are all things that we do need to consider because it does, in the heat of the moment when it goes wrong, and we are, relying on somebody on the ground who's maybe, got other duties to enact quite quickly, it can be quite tricky. And, you're never going to have that operator's manual because that manual is generally speaking going to be in the platform. You haven't got time to read the manual. You need to be able to know what to do, when to do, and how to do it. So I think, Rob, we'll work on that. I think certainly for those of you who don't know, Rob is going to be replacing Alana on the International Safety Committee. So he will be your new chair. So if you've got any questions, then or you want me to sort of highlight these things, and we can take that.
No, I think it's worth adding as well, Brian, that as safety professionals and as an industry, we'd love for those controls to be standardized, but we're a long way off from that. But it's certainly something that we keep banging the drum about.
For sure, yeah, indeed, yeah. So, okay, Johnson de Cruz has asked regarding wind rating using MEWP as a wind load 12.5 meters per second, the limit. Please advise. Thank you. So, if that is the design wind speed for MEWPs, but Johnson, they do, depending on the type of product, they can be much higher depending on the product, but they can also be significantly lower. Some machines being zero wind rated for not being able to use externally, which we do see incidents occurring from that. I know, Alana, your days with the truck mount world, you can be sometimes in excess of 30, 40 miles an hour on some of them big products, depending on it, and depending, of course, how much you've got in the platform.
Well, this is it. And so the manufacturer's data needs to be checked. You need to think about the environment. You need to think about the position of the basket, how far the boom's reaching out. So, it is down to that risk assessment and the selection of the right machine for the environment that you're working in.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. So Darren has asked a question. Sorry, Lan, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, Darren has asked a question, and it's quite an interesting question. So,
Go on, you're a contractor. You answer that one.
So Darren has said, intelligent anchors and systems, are they really that intelligent when they are constantly overridden by leaving a shackle or carabiner in the anchor or a magnet on the sensor? it is unfortunate the intelligence of the operator is not more focused on keeping themselves safe rather than looking for ingenious ideas to undermine the systems in place to look after themselves. Darren, I 100% agree with you. The term intelligent anchor systems is used, but they're not AI type intelligent. They are. A lot of the safety systems can be overridden by people who don't have the right cultural mindset in terms of health and safety. They see some of the safety systems that we put in place as a hindrance, and these systems move on over time to prevent them from being overridden. But for me, it's a cultural piece with the anchor point systems that we have today. Yes, there is potential to override them, but that's around making people work safely because they want to rather than because they have to. And again, it's a secondary system. It's there for support to help us mitigate risk, but it doesn't always do that in certain applications. Brian, would you agree?
100%, yeah. And I think, yeah, we'll take Darren. If I had a little clap emoji, I'll be clapping the emoji at the moment. So, and I think it's right. We're just, these things are there to help and support. I did have one contractor who had said that they welcomed this because, if anything, it was just like a little timely reminder of, I've forgotten to clip on. And they've seen a reduction of in terms of monitoring of people being not clipped on. So it does help. But yeah, I think we're going there. I think I'm just going to look at, there's some questions here. Why are some manufacturers' manuals now recommending the wearing a harness in the scissor lift when before this was not a requirement? I think it's a really interesting point, that, because we've had that question posed to us before as to, why does our IPAF H1 statement not cover vertical type machines? And if I had a pound for every time somebody asks me, certainly in the UK, that they are clipping on in vertical type machines, ultimately, as I say to many people, there is no law to say that you need to be clipped in on any machine. The law in the UK specifically is to prevent the fall. But we know from the dynamics of a boom type machine, it's more likely that you'll be ejected from the platform because of the boom, the length of the boom, and the bounce, why we talk about the catapult effect. But we know products wise in scissor lifts, it's totally different. That risk is generally different because you've got to be able to work and walk around. You've got to be able to look at the back of the machine to say if it's clear, see if it's clear to lower. But manufacturers, whoever's put this question, will put that anchorage point on there just to cover if a contractor, a user, specifies it. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Alana?
I think, they've been provided on scissor type machines for a number of years now, the anchor points, that is, to enable people to clip on if they need to. And again, it's by risk assessment. So in my time in powered access, I've been asked this question on numerous occasions as to whether or not I would recommend a harness being worn in a scissor lift. And you've got to think about the context in which you're asking the users and the operators inside the machine to wear this. What is the risk that you're looking at? Because it may actually be a hindrance when you look at the size of the floor plate of the basket of a scissor lift in comparison to a boom type MEWP. It may actually hinder them moving around within the machine depending on the nature of work that they're undertaking, because you can have large deck scissors. A number of people do specify that the harness needs to be clipped in when the machine is traveling, particularly when it's traveling over uneven ground, even if it's rough terrain. So it really is down to that risk assessment process, and there's very few companies out there that have mandated this across the board due to the limitations that it provides the user by wearing the harness in some instances.
For sure. I think we're at 1 o'clock now. I don't know if we want to just take one more question, maybe. I think I will take Louise. Okay. Are you okay? Given the fluctuations seen in the graph, can we confidently say that the campaigns contributed to a reduction in accidents, or do these inconsistencies suggest that should we interpret the data with more caution? I think you always need to interpret that data with caution. Remember, that is what we have had reported into our portal. And if you look at the 2024 data, you will see when we conducted the webinar, and Alana was with me that time, the numbers have gone up because, as I said earlier, reports get entered after we have closed off. So we are basing our report to our webinar today on the data that was put into the portal up until February 2025. Our campaigns aren't just a one-year campaign. We keep on reminding you that this is something that we need to constantly keep in the mindset of people who are planning operations. And these, I do believe these are a 5 or a 10-year campaign. Let's see if we can demonstrably see over that period of time have reduced those fatal and serious incidents. But we need your data, we need your help, and we need your support. Alana, I don't know if you've got any final thoughts there on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I completely agree with you. We need the data, we need the support. The data is only as good as the data that we get. And we can only provide insight from the data that's available to us. So, we always do interpret the data with caution, and the International Safety Committee go through the anonymised data to ensure that the incidents have been categorised the right way. Because sometimes people put incidents in and it could be classified as a fall from a platform, but it's actually an overturn that's caused a fall from a platform, as an example. So we do take the ones where we're not 100% sure, and we take an overview of those to make sure that the data is as accurate as it can be. But I think the most important thing for me is you need to keep giving us your data so that we can have a chance of identifying trends and provide the support to the users, to the people putting the operators to work on the MEWPs, to give them the advice and guidance. And that's the only method that we have at this point in time in pinpointing and targeting our campaigns. But they are long-term campaigns, they're not short-term. We don't do a campaign and move on from it. Every campaign that has been launched that we've spoken about today is readily available on the IPAF website, and you don't have to be a member to access it.
Correct. Yeah. So I think, I'll call it there. For those of you who have kindly put some questions, we will respond to those separately. So we have got that ability. Hope you found today useful and thought-provoking. The 2 links that I've ashamedly put on that slide is one link to the Global Safety Report. The English version will be available immediately after this webinar, and the translated version for IPAF languages and our core languages will come in the next couple of days. The link at the bottom, please click, please use that link, register for reporting incidents, and then you can see some of the data. This leads me really only to thank my co-host today, Alana Patterson. Thank you as ever for your support and your, tenacity in getting us there. You've helped us go through this global safety report process. You've been the chair of IPAF's International Safety Committee for the last 2 years, but you've been on that committee for much longer, as we know, and I've known you for a lot of years. So, Alana, really do big thank you very much for what you've helped and how much support you give me. I also need to thank those members who have provided their data, and also the teams within IPAF who have worked tirelessly to get this available for you. So thank you and take care. Please don't hesitate to contact IPAF Safety and Technical team if you need any support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.